Evelyn didn't find the cabin by chance. She found it on the last page of a forgotten internet forum, buried deep beneath conspiracy theories and posts about off-grid living. It wasn't even described well, just a few grainy photos, a set of coordinates, and a cryptic note that read, "Rent at your own risk. Don't stay past the 29th night." To anyone else it would have sounded like a joke. But Evelyn was desperate. Desperate for silence, for distance, for disappearance. Just 6 months earlier she'd been the darling of the mindfulness tech world. Her face had been on panels, podcasts, magazine covers. Her company promised peace in a world that never shut up, and people bought it. Millions downloaded her meditation app. Influencers promoted her retreats like sacred experiences. But then it all fell apart. A scandal broke. Her co-founder overdosed in a hotel room in Berlin. Investors started pulling out. Lawsuits surfaced. There were whispers of stolen data, manipulated metrics, even digital stalking. Evelyn said nothing. She didn't explain or defend. She just disappeared. The cabin became her exit. It was located in northern Maine, deep enough into the woods that satellite signals faded and the road turned to dirt, then gravel, then nothing. She paid 3 months in advance, wired the money to an untraceable account. No lease. No ID required. Just GPS coordinates, a mailbox key, and a warning that kept looping in her mind like a lullaby gone sour. Don't stay past the 29th night. Evelyn told herself she didn't believe in warnings like that. She wasn't superstitious. She was burned out, maybe even unraveling, but she still had her logic. And yet, as soon as she arrived at the cabin, logic began to rot. The structure was old, older than it looked in the photos. The wood had warped under decades of harsh winters. Moss covered the roof. The windows were too clean, like someone, or something, had just wiped them from the inside. The front door was already unlocked. Evelyn stood there for a long time, one hand on the handle, unsure if she was walking into peace or something far more permanent. She stepped inside. The air was heavy. Not dusty like an abandoned home should be, but thick, still, like something had been holding its breath for years. The cabin was small. 1 bedroom, a creaking loft, a fireplace, a kitchen with knives too sharp for how dull the rest of the place felt. And mirrors. There were mirrors everywhere. On the walls, behind doors, even tucked in strange corners where no mirror should belong. They weren't modern mirrors either. They were old. Clouded. The kind that didn't just reflect but seemed to remember. Evelyn didn't touch them. She unpacked her things, just a few clothes, a stack of books, a journal, and convinced herself that this was what she needed. A quiet place. A break from the world. A place to write again. The first few nights were uneventful. The kind of uneventful that felt like it was waiting. Evelyn read during the day, sipped tea by the fire, and tried to pretend the silence was healing her. But every night at exactly 3:17 a.m., the temperature in the cabin would drop. The lights would flicker, even though she wasn't connected to any power grid. And she'd wake up, sweating, shaking, with a distinct sensation of being watched. She tried to laugh it off. Tried to rationalize it. But on the 7th night, she found something behind the firewood stack. A weathered, mold-stained leather-bound journal. The entries were dated from 1991 to 1994. The handwriting grew more erratic with each page. Names were scratched out. Sentences unfinished. By the end, the writer wasn't even using words, just symbols. Circles. Repeated lines of text that looked like they were written while crying or screaming. The final page was a single sentence, underlined 3 times. Don't let the house learn your name. That night, Evelyn dreamed of the mirrors. But she wasn't looking into them, she was inside them, watching herself sleep. Her reflection blinked. She didn't. The next morning, one of the mirrors had cracked, though she hadn't touched it. On the 10th day, her phone stopped working. Fully charged one moment, completely dead the next. The solar battery fried itself without warning. Her laptop crashed. Her watch stopped at 3:17 a.m. She tried to leave. The trail she'd used to reach the cabin had vanished, swallowed by the forest. The trees looked different now. Taller. Closer. Almost breathing. She turned around. The cabin was right behind her, even though she'd walked half a mile away. It wasn't just that she was lost. It was that the cabin wasn't. Something about it was anchored deeper than geography. It wanted her there. She stayed inside the next few days. Read the journal over and over. The original author had experienced the same things. Flickering lights, warped reflections, cold spots that moved through the house like silent footsteps. Then the entries shifted. The author began writing things they couldn't remember doing. Cooking meals they never ate. Writing pages they couldn't recall. That's when Evelyn noticed her own journal had changed. There were entries she hadn't written, paragraphs she didn't remember drafting. They were signed with her name, dated correctly, written in her handwriting, but she had no memory of them. Her reflection was starting to move differently, too slowly, then too fast, and sometimes it smiled when she didn't. By the 18th day, the mirrors couldn't be covered. Every time she tried to hang a towel or tape up cardboard, the material would be gone by morning. One mirror reappeared in her bathroom, though she could have sworn there wasn't one before. The face in that mirror didn't blink. She stopped brushing her teeth in front of it, stopped looking at her reflection altogether. But she could feel it watching her, always just out of sight, smiling. On the 21st night, Evelyn found a voice recorder tucked beneath the couch. A single file had been saved on it. She pressed play. The voice was hers, but the message wasn't. "I can see everything now," the voice whispered. "It's not just mirrors. It's doors, windows, screens, anything that reflects light. It doesn't need your name anymore. It knows your face." Evelyn dropped the recorder. She didn't sleep that night. She didn't sleep for the next 5. By the 22nd night, Evelyn had stopped pretending she could leave. She no longer made daily hikes to find the trail. She didn't ration food. The pantry, strangely, never seemed to empty, though she knew she hadn't packed enough to last this long. The labels on the cans began to change, sometimes written in languages she didn't recognize, other times just symbols. Circles. More eyes. She didn't eat much after that. Her body felt weightless, like she existed only within the boundaries of the cabin now, like the forest had forgotten her name, and only the cabin remembered. The mirrors no longer waited for her to look. Now they showed things on their own. At first it was small, subtle movements in the corner of her vision. Then full images. On the 23rd night, the bathroom mirror showed her standing behind herself, head tilted, smiling wide. Too wide. She didn't go near the bathroom after that. On the 25th night, Evelyn started hearing voices, not in her head but in the walls. They whispered her name. Not always hers. Sometimes the names of people she didn't know. Sometimes a name she was sure had been on the last page of the journal. The voices didn't beg for help. They didn't scream. They whispered like old friends, welcoming her home. On the 26th night, she found a new entry in the journal. A clean page, ink still wet. The handwriting wasn't hers. It wasn't the original author's either. It was too neat, mechanical. The words read, "Stay, become, witness." Evelyn didn't sleep at all that night. Instead, she stared into the fire until the flames started spelling her name in smoke. On the 27th day, the mirrors reflected a version of the cabin she didn't recognize. It looked identical, but in the reflection, someone else was walking through it. A woman with long dark hair, dragging her fingers along the walls, whispering softly in a language Evelyn had never heard. The woman never looked directly at her, but Evelyn knew. She knew she was being watched. By the 28th night, Evelyn's journal was writing itself. Each page filled slowly, like the pen moved on its own. It was telling a story, her story, but it didn't end with her leaving. It ended with the cabin being empty again, waiting for the next one. That night, Evelyn stood in front of the largest mirror in the living room. She stared at her reflection for what felt like hours. And then, quietly, her reflection lifted its hand and waved. Evelyn did not. She backed away slowly, heart pounding. But her reflection kept waving. Then it placed a finger against its lips. And smiled. The smile wasn't human. The 29th day came like a funeral march. Slow. Heavy. The air smelled like ash and something rotting beneath the floorboards. Evelyn packed her things, not because she believed she could leave but because she had to try. Something deep inside her screamed that if she stayed past midnight, she wouldn't be Evelyn anymore. She wouldn't be anything. She left everything behind except her coat, a flashlight, and the map she'd drawn of the trails, none of which made sense anymore. The trees had shifted again. The landmarks had vanished. She ran. 4 hours she ran through the forest, breath ragged, legs burning. The flashlight died before sunset. She kept going in the dark, guided only by instinct. Somewhere behind her, the forest laughed. Branches didn't break under her feet. They moved for her, guided her, twisted around her legs like hands. She fell. Got up. Fell again. Kept going. And then, finally, light. A road. A real road. She stumbled onto it just before midnight, collapsing under a flickering street lamp that hadn't been there before. A car passed. Then another. Evelyn was free. Or so she thought. After the cabin. She returned to the city weeks later, thinner, hollowed out. She didn't talk about what happened, not to the press, not to her friends. She told everyone she'd gone on a sabbatical, a healing journey, a digital detox. She smiled on podcasts, wrote vague blog posts about the power of nature. Her company rebranded her as a survivor, a symbol of resilience. But Evelyn knew the truth. She was no longer Evelyn. Not completely. Sometimes, in mirrors, she catches a glimpse of someone else. A flicker of a grin. A movement that doesn't match hers. Sometimes, her reflection forgets to blink. Her phone camera turns on by itself. And every night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., she wakes up cold. As if something has just stepped away from the bed. Sometimes she hears whispers in the pipes. In the walls. In the hum of her laptop fan. Once, she opened her journal to find a single page written in handwriting that wasn't hers. Welcome back. And on the last line. Don't let the mirror learn your name. But it already had.